Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But he called to him, "Man, who made me a judge or arbiter over you?" And he said to them, "Take care and be on your guard against all covetousness. For one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." And he told them a parable, saying, "The land of a rich man produced plentifully. And he thought to himself, 'What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops.' And he said, 'I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger barns. And there I will store all of my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have now ample goods stored up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your soul will be required of you, and the things that you have prepared, whose will they be? So it is one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God.'"
I feel so liberated when I hit the mask off. I'm not sure why that would be. By the way, speaking of masks, I just wanted to say, and I don't see her now, but when the young lady came in with small children, I didn't recognize who she was, because you can't really recognize a visitor when they have a mask on. It's hard enough when we see members with masks. But it was Dennis and Barbara's daughter, Linda, with her kids. And so I wanted to apologize to her for not recognizing her, and now she's gone, so maybe it's something I didn't say, that I'm sure she's minding her kids. This is an interesting passage that we've just talked about that really deals with something that's very important to us and should be on our hearts as well. Last time I checked, I did not have eyes on the back of my head, so if someone could turn on the projector on that particular wall, I'll be able to see what we're doing. Our bulletin is yellow today. If you have it in front of you, you know that we have an outline of the message right here. So we're going to do some fill in the blanks as we go through it. That's not where I wanted to be, so let me move backwards. It's tough to get good help these days. That's all right. All right, here we go. Here we go. No harm, no foul, as they say in basketball. I don't know about you in your childhood, but one of the things that we were always asked to do was prepare a list of what we wanted for Christmas. I don't know if you did that or not, but we used to do that. And one of the things that we always seem to do is really write down items that we wanted and not necessarily things that we needed. And you probably did the same thing. For Christmas, I wanted the things I wanted, not necessarily the things that I needed. I did not ever one time write on those lists of things that I wanted, socks. Please give me socks for Christmas. And when my grandmother did give me socks, I would open up the package and say, "Oh, yikes, socks." I may have needed them, but I really didn't want that. And sometimes our spiritual life is just like that. Sometimes what we need from God is so much more than what we want. We need a lot of things. Spiritually, we may not want as much as we need. We think what we want from God is just helping us deal with stress. But God looks at us and He says, that I can take care of that, but really, That's what you want. You want to deal with stress, but what you need is to dig down deep inside yourself and find out the reason for the stress, and let's deal with that together. See, we don't want to get down that far sometimes. We want a simple, fast answer, a simple, fast solution that's easy. We don't want to work for it. That's what we want. But sometimes God says, no, Roy, you need more than that. This is what you need. In this passage, Jesus was teaching the importance of fearing God and confessing Him before others when he gets interrupted with this to resolve a family dispute. And the request was this. We see this in beginning of verse 13. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Well, just as in our day, in Jesus' day, there were regulations that were put into place when someone passed away for the division of their stuff. And we have the same thing today. But just like in Jesus' day, in our day as well, if those provisions aren't laid out properly, sometimes there are family disputes that take place. There are family issues that come up. There are words that are spoken that can never be taken back because of that. But Jesus takes a look and realizes this man needs much more than he wants. What he needs is something far deeper. Because what he wants is only a fast financial settlement. But what he needs is told in the response. Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbitrator between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." Then he said to them, "Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed." Again, life does not consist in the abundance of our possessions. So what this man was talking about was a financial law. But what this man needs to understand is life. Because life is not defined by what you have. And regardless of what the media tries to tell us, regardless of what the advertisers are giving us this time of year, our life does not consist of all the stuff that we can gather for ourselves. And you might wonder yourself, why are we talking about this? I mean, Christmas is a couple of weeks away. Let's be jolly and let's talk about something uplifting. Well, this really is when you think about it. Because if we're talking about stuff and we're talking about greed, what's the opposite of that? Being thankful. Now, I know we've been through Thanksgiving, but is there anything more that we can be thankful for other than the birth of Jesus? And that's what we're celebrating this time of year. We know there's no indication that he was born on December the 25th. But it is a great time to celebrate with the world the greatest gift that's ever been given to mankind, and that's Jesus. But as we're going through this time of giving, of getting gifts, it's a perfect time for the advertisers to bombard us with sales. I don't know if you shop online. I do most of my shopping online. It makes it a lot easier for me to do. But once you key in a particular item that you want to purchase for someone, suddenly for the next weeks, you continually get interrupted with their ads on your computer. And if you're not careful, you're going to find yourself thinking, well, I got my son this, but now they're saying I could get something else that I really like at a much cheaper price, so I'm going to get it. We find sometimes that holiday shopping ends up being more about us than about them. And they play to our greed. Now think about it. We may not think that we suffer from that, but many times we do and don't even know it. You see, they play to this concept of, I'm going to give you what you want, not what you need. Because I know what excites you the most is not what you need, but what you want. And so they play to that. You know, there are many forms of greed. That we haven't even begun to consider. But we need to think about this. Life is not defined by what you have. And you can't live happily and want a lot. You know, people always want. It's like some of the children you see going through Target or department stores, and they got they're grabbing things. I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. And I always feel sorry for the mom who's there trying to discipline them quietly, because all they do is want. We can't be happy in our lives if we constantly want. And we cannot define ourselves by what we have. We can't define ourselves by what we have. We had someone here many years ago that would bring her 2 children in for Bible class, and then they would stay for worship, and they were high school kids. And the mother was very successful in her business, and she drove a brand new Lexus. And she would pull up right in front in the Lexus, drop the kids off, and then she'd go off. And I was standing there one time and watched her, and I waved to her, and the lady standing next to me said to me, I am so impressed with her success. And I said, you know, I would be impressed with her if she just parked the car and came in. But you see, that's what we do. Sometimes we define other people by what they have, not what they are, not who they are. You aren't what you own. Because you don't own anything. We do not own anything. Everything that we have is a gift from God. We're simply stewards, charged to take care of it. That's what we're called to do. But I want us to be very clear about this. What Jesus is not addressing is wealth. What he is addressing is want. And there's a difference between the two. A poor person can want. A middle-class person can want. A rich person can want. Jesus is not warning us about wealth. He's warning us about want. Because it's that want that drives us to the decisions that we make. What is it that you want? If you were making out a Christmas list, what would you put on that you want? I think as we get older, we set aside material things when we're asked that kind of question, and we think of spiritual. Because you know what I want? I want peace. I want joy. I want happiness. And you know where we can find all those things on that want list? Through Jesus Christ. We find it right here. We find it with each other. We find it with our relationships. That's what brings us true joy. That's what defines us. It defines our character. It shows our priorities. What's most important to us is our relationship to God, and by virtue of that relationship through Jesus Christ, our relationship with each other. If you really want to live, you can't always want something you don't have. And then Jesus gets into the parable, beginning verse 16. So if you have your Bible in front of you still, let's look at this. And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundance of harvest. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. And then he said, this is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus of grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. And God said to him, you fool. This very night your life will be demanded of you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be when whoever stores up things for themselves but is not rich toward God. Did you notice in this parable that Jesus starts with the word rich and he ends with the word rich? But they're on the both ends of the spectrum. I love these car commercials that come out this time of year. I think it's Audi's Christmas time celebration, and you can buy these beautiful cars, and they have bows and the multiple colors, and it's snowing, and it's just a perfect picture. If you really want to be happy at Christmas, this is what you need to get. But is that what really makes us happy? It did the rich man. But Jesus is trying to tell him, that's not true happiness. That's not true happiness. If you want to live a lot, you've got to have God in your life. So Jesus tells this man about a rich man, it turns out isn't actually so rich. But notice how he became rich, and this is important to understand as well. He became rich not by stealing, not by lying, not by taking advantage of anyone. He just worked hard. And we know that God blesses our work. And so there was nothing wrong with him being successful. God made a natural system where sometimes if you work hard enough and circumstances are just right, then you will yield an abundant harvest. And we know that. Wealth isn't not in and of itself a bad thing. But notice what the man goes on to say. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain, and I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. Well, this rich man made two mistakes. The first one is miscalculating how much time he had. And we do that sometimes, don't we? Do you realize how quickly the year 2021 has gone? I haven't heard anyone say yet, boy, this year just dragged by. It's about time we get to Christmas. Just the opposite. And the older we get, the faster it goes. It is a fact of life, isn't it? How much time do we have? We don't know. But that's a good thing. I don't want to know. Because I want us to live each day as if this were the last. And if I focus on that, then I will be truly grateful for everything I have. I know you know Christmas Eve is a difficult time for me. Because that's the day in 2019 I lost my son. 48 years old. He didn't know that was going to be his last day. He didn't know going to drop the dog off and then driving back home to pick up the family was going to be the last moment of his life. But he planned for it. He was ready for it. And he had told his kids that the happiest day of his life had not yet come. it would come the day he left this earth to join the Master. We don't know how much time we have, but that's a good thing. It's an exciting thing because we know what's on the other side. We know what's waiting for us. And it brings us great joy. And it gives us that peace that we know we need that no one else understands. So he made two mistakes. He had no idea how much time he had. He thought he had forever time. But we know we don't. And then he miscalculated how much treasure he had. And we do that sometimes too. We miscalculate how much treasure we have. The rich man thinks about all that stuff that he has. And it's all in the first person. I want you to notice this. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. And then he said, this is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, everything was about him. Everything was about him. We can't be truly rich and think in the first person singular. We can't do it. Because it's not ours. Sure, he worked hard for everything, but everything to him was a gift. It should have been realized that way. You can't be truly rich if you think it's all about you, because it's not. Oh, you may have monetary gains, you may have worldly wealth, but you're not truly rich. Because you're only thinking about yourself. So here's the application. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded of you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will all be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. You see, there's a rich that comes from storing up stuff for you. But there's also a rich that comes in giving it away for God. When you genuinely use all the resources at your disposal for God's purposes, rather than your own, that's when you become truly rich. I know people, Christian people, who live their lives in order to do for others, who have been successful, but they're successful, I think, has been a blessing because of all they have done for other people. And you know what? There's a certain joy that comes with giving that you can't get any other way. Only by giving others do you really feel the blessing of giving. And that's when you become truly rich. You are only fully alive when you excel in God-given generosity. Let's think about it a different way. Think about this for just a minute. And you have probably gone through this exercise before. But you're at home, minding your own business, maybe watching a little TV, whatever you're doing. And all of a sudden a massive fire breaks out in your house. What is it that you grab to take out? What is it that's so important to you? Other than, I'm not talking about your kids or your spouse or your dog or your cat or whatever. I'm talking about things. What's most important to you? What is it that you really want to get your hands on and get out of the house before it burns? Some people are prepared for that. I know we were, and we had we had a container with everything that, heaven forbid, a fire should come or earthquake or we had to leave immediately, just pick it up and it would go with us. But what would you take? What would be in that container for you? Whatever is in that container shows what's most important to you. Birth certificates, pictures, oh, the pictures, memories that cannot be replicated. What else would be in there? Interesting to think about, isn't it? I read once in a cancer magazine about a young man with a wife and 3 daughters that wasn't feeling well and went to the local emergency room with abdominal pain. And after several tests, they found out that he in fact had stage 4 colon cancer. And in one instant, in one doctor conversation, their entire life changed. You see, they had plans. Their kids were still young. They had plans. We'll watch them grow up, and we're going to retire, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. But in an instant, their entire life was turned upside down. And he decided to start a blog. A blog's a very great source of information if you're hooked up to the correct one. And the first thing he wrote on the blog was there are 3 things that he and his wife Joni were clinging to. 3 things they were clinging to as they were going through this end life experience that he was facing. And the first 2, I think, are rather common. Faith and hope. Faith and hope. But this is the third that I wanted to point out to you, that I think really encapsulates the entire spirit of this man and his wife. And the third was gratitude. Faith, hope, and gratitude. And this is what he wrote in the blog. Gratitude has become our weapon of choice against discouragement, fear, and self-pity. Instead of focusing on what is not going our way, we will do our best to watch for God's fingerprints and to give thanks in all circumstances, one day at a time. You know that God has His hands all over your life? You ever stop and look for His fingerprints? You want to see evidence of Him in your life? Just look. The evidence is there. His fingerprints are all over us. We can be thankful for that. Faith, hope, and gratitude. Gratitude is directed thanksgiving. Directed, specific thanksgiving. And it's our weapon against greed. Because it keeps our eyes off of what we don't have, and it reminds us what we do have isn't ours. That it's a gift from God. You see, the most generous people on this planet are also the ones that are most thankful. So here's what I'd like for you to think about over the next 13 days as we go into through the holiday season. I want you to take some time this week to make a list of what you would grab if your house were on fire. And then after you've done that, spend some time in prayer, giving thanks to God for each of those things that you would take in case of fire. How many times does He have to remind us that where your treasure is, there your heart will be also? We are a blessed people, living a life with a God that has prepared a home for us when we leave this place. A home where we don't have to worry about financial things. A home where we don't have to wear masks. Well, there are going to be no more tears, no more sorrow. Where God will wipe away every tear. That's a place where I want to go. That's a place I look forward to going. I want to make sure that we all get there. And so let's think about our lives as we go through the next couple of weeks. And truly be thankful people in everything that God has given us. Because when we are thankful, truly thankful, then we are living the kind of life that God has created us to live. So if you're here this morning and we can help you in your life, we want to do that. Again, it was good seeing the McNeil family here. I asked them where they sat when they were here, because there's something about knowing where people sit. I know Jerry and Sandy sat over there for class. It threw me off. I want to tell you it threw me all off because you're supposed to sit there. We get used to where people sit, don't we? We have our assigned seats almost. But the seats that we want to be assigned are not here. They're in heaven. And we are going to help each other get there. Through encouragement, through love, through prayer, through Bible study, through the grace of God. Being thankful for the gift of Jesus Christ. So we can help you in any way this morning. If you're not yet become a child of God, been baptized into Jesus Christ, be raised as a new person, that's the most important thing you'll ever do. Everything begins from there. If we can help in any way, we ask that you come forward as together we stand and sing.